Welcome everyone to KEDA's weekly webinar related to the COVID crisis. And this week we are focusing on funding for your business. I am Kathy Kokos with Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. I am the Business Development Director, and we are happy to be here to work with you and provide any insights and information that we hope is useful for you. We have three guests today. I'm going to start out though by just giving a quick overview of the program that Governor Inslee announced just a few days ago, although to me it seems like a week, the Working Washington Small Business Emergency Grant Program, where small businesses with 10 or fewer employees can apply for up to $10,000. You will find the application on our website, on the official state website, which is coronavirus.wa.gov, or the Washington Department of Commerce's website. So the basics are small business, in business for over a year. You have to have 10 or fewer employees. And the key is to be as detailed as possible in your application. If you tell me that in your application that you are going to use it for rent and other operating expenses, I need more detail than that for it to be reviewed. I need to know what expenses you are unable to pay and the amounts. And as a reminder, this grant does not cover payroll. So we are going to move on. I think our speakers today are Steve Maxwell with Kitsap Bank, Jaime Forsyth with the Kitsap Small Business Development Center, and Mark Costello, Deputy District Director for the SBA. I am going to ask Steve to start us out. They have been very busy since the announcement of the Paycheck Protection Program loan was announced. So Steve, take it away.
Sure, well, thank you. Happy to be here. And obviously a challenging and important time for all of us in our country and in our business community and in our local markets. And I guess as far as talking points, I'd love to update you on the Paycheck Protection Program. But first, before I do that, let me just step back. I think about Kitsap Bank. We're a $1.2 billion community bank headquartered here in Port Orchard. We view that our role in this crisis is significant, and we take that role seriously. We are privileged and humbled to be in this role where we can help our communities and support our clients and be part of the solution. And we are working literally day, night, and weekend to do that and deliver that in different ways. And I don't say that to somehow put us into a hero role, because I think the small businesses that are battling through this and working hard to just survive are the heroes. So we're all of us are aligned, no matter what our role is in this crisis, with the same goal, working together to help each other make it through. So we take our role seriously in this, and the area that we've been focused on is really two things. I know there's some SBA programs beyond the Paycheck Protection Program, but that's been the bulk of, it's been the entirety of my focus the past 2 weeks. But even before that program was announced, we almost immediately, upon businesses shutting down, processing, loan modifications, loan deferments. I mean, right now I just checked, we have 200 requests for loan deferrals, loan payment deferrals, commercial loan payment deferrals in process right now that we're working on. So we're doing everything we can to provide necessary relief. And the Paycheck Protection Program is part of what we are, looking forward to assisting with. On the screen, there's some highlights of the program. I imagine most of this audience is aware of these general highlights. From a time frame standpoint, this program was part of the $2 trillion CARES Act that was signed into law very end of March. And part of that CARES Act was an allocation of $350 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. And it's an awesome idea in order to get money from, get money into the hands of the small businesses to keep lights on and people employed, and facilitating that through the banks in the form of low interest forgivable loans and with payment deferral for 6 months. So it's a super program. The timeline of putting that together has been interesting from a banker's standpoint. The program, like I said, was approved under the CARES Act late March, and then in the subsequent week, which was basically last week, there was a number of changes in the program, including the interest rate to the banks and some of the details. So it was difficult to plan for because those changes had material impacts on how we needed to execute. So, and we've got to do this in a way that is not just for a handful of borrowers, but for literally thousands of borrowers. So we've been busy. I use the phrase, we're building a factory, that we can run these loans through in a very efficient way, but we're building that factory from a standing start. So, very few banks took applications last Friday, which was the first day the program was open, because they were building their own factory as well. This week, as you know, maybe you're experiencing it or you're reading about it, banks are beginning to take applications. There's still lots of moving parts and unanswered questions, but we're moving forward in a planful way, we being the industry. So I know there'll be lots of questions around that, and I'd love to talk about some things that I would suggest that can help you as a business owner, a business person, be successful in this program. Where we're at Kitsap Bank is we're on the verge of launching our program, taking applications and processing them through. We're anticipating that to begin most likely tomorrow. We've been organizing around that goal, and then once we can open up that application portal, we can then process them in a broad way, in an efficient way for everybody. But what I would say, on the next slide, as I think about, what would help from working together with your banker, I would encourage you, and these are the same things I've asked my employees to do. Be informed, know the program. There's lots of great information out there on the program. I direct you to the SBA.gov website. Every bank has their own resource. There's resources all over the place. There's lots of information. So know the program, be informed, and be available. I mean, banks are going to ask you to jump quickly when they're ready to work with you on your application. And I know you want to have that a successful program. So just be available to jump with them. They're going to need your help to move your application through as efficiently as possible. And then be patient. It may not appear like it sometimes, but the banks are really hustling. I've talked to a lot of bankers from big organizations, small community banks in this state, out of the state, and every single one I've talked to has two things in common. They really care about their communities, and they're really hustling and working hard. So be patient as we work together on that. And then the last thing I'd say is be prepared. As if you're an applicant for the Paycheck Protection Program, you're gonna have to provide some information to support your loan amount. That may vary, bank to bank, in the way we're interpreting what our obligation is. But you're going to be prepared with, 941 tax documents, payroll reports, supporting documents around benefits, things that will allow the bank to do its good faith effort in verifying the loan amount. I know we all want that to be an efficient process, so the more prepared you are to provide that to your bank, whether that be electronically or however that your bank wants you to deliver it, be prepared. So those are that's the best approach, I would say. So Kathy, would you like me to stop there and let others jump in, or how would you like me to proceed?
Although there is we are getting questions coming in, so we will get to those once people have done their intro information. So folks, just use the Q&A. And I see some people are using chat, so we will keep tracking that. So I want to go next to Mark Costello with the SBA. Jaime, Teresa is going to go, he's going to be using the screen to show things and give us the current status of what the SBA is assisting all these businesses with. So thank you, Mark, for being with us today.
Thanks, Kathy. Can you hear me okay?
A little louder, maybe.
Okay. All right. That a little better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. My computer camera died on me yesterday, so I'm using my daughter's laptop. So I'm trying to work through that a little bit. But hey, maybe and I appreciate having a chance to. I jumped on just a little bit late, but I really appreciate having a chance to hear Steve's comments about what Kitsap Bank is doing to participate in the Paycheck Protection Program. I wanted to maybe just reiterate a few points with regard to that. And I also wanted to just talk about a couple of other programs that are available to small businesses right now as folks are trying to deal with this current economic interruption. But with respect to the Paycheck Protection Program, and I didn't catch if Steve covered this or not, but essentially the concept is that it is really a payroll driven program, and the intent is to hopefully get money out to as many small businesses as possible as quickly as possible to allow them to keep their operations intact, in particular with respect to their staff and employees. So in some ways it's kind of a little bit of a substitution, if you will, for some of the different unemployment opportunities that are available now. The intent is to quickly get money to employees, to allow businesses to remain intact, so that when we get to the end of this current situation, those businesses are going to be ready, hopefully, to re-engage in a serious way and have their people in place so that they don't have to immediately go out and have to rehire and retrain and all of those things that have costs and time associated with them. So this is really intended to keep businesses in sort of a status quo position, if you will, even if the business is one that has been forced to close. So the hope here is that if people have been able to pay their employees up until now, this is going to provide some much needed relief over the next 8 weeks or so. And that even if businesses have employees that have been taking unemployment, that this would be an opportunity, in fact, to bring those employees back. Those are going to be situational decisions, I think, that the business and the employees are going to need to make, depending on what the current offering is through unemployment and the enhanced package that might be available. It might make sense in some cases for those employees to just continue to have a dialogue with the business owner and be ready to come off unemployment at the end. But generally speaking, what we're promoting is this concept of having the employees on the payroll and hopefully providing a little bit of additional capital through this program to allow the businesses to cover some operating costs as well. I think Steve probably talked about the idea that essentially 75% of the amount of one of these loans is to be used at a minimum for payroll. But beyond that, the other 25% can be used for things like rent, equipment lease payments, utility payments, other kinds of overhead, even payment of interest on existing debt can be accomplished with that other 25% piece. So I keep talking about this 75%. And so what the trick here is that if you guys as small business owners are able to demonstrate at the end of 8 weeks that you did in fact use 75% of the proceeds of these loans for payroll related purposes, the debt is designed to be forgiven. So in other words, this is going to be money that sort of takes the appearance of a grant, if you will, as long as that payroll requirement is met. So what's really happening here is SBA and the Treasury are utilizing this fantastic network of commercial lenders that SBA typically works with to provide our sort of run-of-the-mill guaranteed loan products. And we're using those folks and their capacity and expertise and proficiency in providing financing to deliver this money as quickly as possible. What I wanted to say, and I saw one of the questions that came up, had to do with finding a lender. So I think there's a couple things going on that people need to be realistic about. This is a program that was pushed out very quickly, as Steve alluded to, and so the lending community was put in a position where they had to, in turn, ramp up and be ready to start taking applications in a really, really, really quick fashion. So there's urgency and expediency behind this whole thing, but what that leads to, I think, in some cases is some challenges as far as people being able to get immediate feedback or immediate access to these programs. It'd be wonderful if everybody had a lender that they could go to and make application today and get their money tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's not going to work quite like that in some cases. So I know, I think I heard Steve indicate that they have received many applications already. And I think what's generally happening is banks are getting those applications from their existing clients. And so they're trying to process those applications, but they all are dealing with significant backlogs and significant queues, as not only are they trying to sort of implement their own systems for accomplishing these loans, but also they're trying to understand the policies and the guidelines under which they're supposed to be delivering the money. In other words, they're waiting for the rules in some cases from SBA and Treasury. And I can tell you that SBA and Treasury are working feverishly to push that guidance and those policies out as quickly as possible. But it can be a little bit of a delay built into this entire process. So folks do need to maybe think about these timing challenges, and I would just urge people to have a little bit of patience as this machinery gets put in place and really gets up and running. I'm confident that when it does get there, which could be very soon, it's going to be a highly effective system for pushing out a lot of money that businesses need to sustain themselves over the next 8 to 10 weeks. In terms of people that don't have either don't have what would be considered a business banking relationship, or people that have a banking relationship but they've determined that their lender is not participating in this program. We're sort of recommending a course of action that is sort of based on doing some legwork. So business owners are going to have to go out and really find out what's going on the street, if you will. So one tool that's available at the SBA website is sba.gov and / coronavirus. So within that site, you guys are going to find a lot of detail about the Paycheck Protection Program, but within that there is a lender locator, and what that will allow you to do is put in your zip code, and what you're going to see is a listing of banks and credit unions that are SBA participating lenders in your area. And so what that means is that they have signed an agreement that allows them to do regular SBA guaranteed loans. What it doesn't exactly mean is that they're doing Paycheck Protection Program loans, but it's a starting point from which you can say, okay, I know, for example, that there are several banks in the area that are showing up on the SBA list. You guys can then reach out to them, and I think this can generally happen, virtually. You can go to their website. You can see what they have put up in terms of Paycheck Protection Program participation, whether or not they're doing the program at all, and if so, whether or not they're able to take applications from businesses that are not customers of the bank. I think it can be potentially frustrating because what's happening right now is lenders are trying to kind of get their arms around exactly what this is, exactly what the size of the demand is on them, and whether or not they then can say, hey, we'll work with anybody, or whether or not they're constrained in terms of their own capacity. But there are some lenders out there, I have heard anecdotally, that would be interested in taking on those sort of orphan businesses, if you will, in doing the program. So I think it's just going to require some legwork on your part, and the situation, unfortunately, is a little bit fluid. We've heard of lenders that were participating in the program, and now they've determined that they're at a limit in terms of their capacity, and they maybe are putting out information that they're not participating anymore. I know that there's one large national bank that ran into some trouble right away as far as a cap in their participation. However, I also saw in the news that there may be some relief available to that lender from the regulatory authorities that would allow them to do more loans. And specifically, I'm talking about Wells Fargo. And I know that Wells Fargo has a pretty big footprint, and a lot of businesses bank with them. So if it were me, I would certainly be checking their website to determine their current status with respect to making these loans. Ultimately, this process is intended to be streamlined, and while it isn't painless, as Steve alluded to, there is still going to be a requirement for certain documentation to establish payroll expenses and things of that nature. It's considerably reduced in terms of the demand for documentation, and really even what we're asking the lenders to do in this process. This is not a necessarily driven by typical credit analysis and things like that. This is really more about a one-time infusion of capital to cover payroll costs. And again, if certain requirements are met as far as the percentage of the money used for payroll, this is debt that is going to be essentially converted to a grant and forgiven. And in a lot of ways, again, it's an alternative, I think, to some of the different kinds of assistance that are available for unemployment but ultimately would have the benefit of allowing an organization to keep all of their key people on board, taken care of, and ready to go, hopefully at the time that we start to return to a normal economic footing. One of the questions that frequently has come up is having to do with, hey, my business is closed. Why would we do that? Why would we bring the employees back if the business is closed and they're not going to be able to work? And all I would say to that is yeah, I get that. That makes sense. But again, this is kind of an alternative to unemployment. There's nothing wrong with using these funds to pay people who are not able to come into work. And hopefully, ultimately, they're going to be able to collaborate with you a little bit as you guys go forward in your planning and strategizing and all the different things that you do on a regular basis, even though they might be at home rather than in the shop. You can be communicating with those employees and really getting ready to launch the business back or re-engage in earnest at the time that people start to have a chance to get back out, and some of our guidance from the government starts to change and maybe be opened up a little bit. So with that, Kathy, I'd go ahead and turn it back over to you. And,
okay, if you could just address in a sentence or two the recent changes to the EIDL loan for the advance amount.
Right. Yeah. So the other opportunity out there for businesses has been the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan product. And I can tell you that, and that was the first program that was made available in response to the current situation. So that actually came out maybe a couple of weeks before the CARES Act legislation was signed and the Paycheck Protection Program was rolled out. So initially, the EIDL program was launched with the opportunity to provide information about monthly costs, and with the intent of being able to receive a loan offer from SBA based on that amount, projected out over maybe as much as 6 months. And what happened as a result of the CARES Act, apparently that carved out $10 billion that was intended to enhance the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. And specifically, the idea there was to provide for a what they called a quick cash upfront payment on the loan. And the idea there is that money, the amount of the quick cash payment was up to $10,000, and it was going to be a function of the number of employees in the business. The hope was that money would be deployed quickly. I think what's happened is there has been such an overwhelming demand for that program that SBA is working feverishly to respond to all of the applications that have been submitted. The number I have heard is something in excess of 2 million.
My goodness, yeah.
So yeah, we're just in a position where everything is so massive that the ability to do some of these things in really a timely manner or in a fashion that people expect in as far as our responsiveness, we've just been frankly struggling with that. So ultimately, people should be starting, I've understood anecdotally anyway, that people are starting to get some feedback as far as the outcomes on their loan applications. And hopefully that, and by the way, that upfront piece that I talked about is actually forgivable debt as well. So there's something there in terms of the prospect of getting much needed capital to hopefully allow businesses to kind of carry on meet their basic operating expenses, and do that in a way that's going to allow them to get through this. What I finally would encourage with respect to both programs is for people to be aware that this isn't a one or the other proposition, that you in fact can apply for both the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program as well as the Paycheck Protection Program. And they can both have potential benefits. One is debt for certain, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, but it's long-term debt. It's programmed out over 15 or 30 years. It's fixed interest at 3.75%, and it might make sense in combination with a Paycheck Protection Program loan, in that the Economic Injury Disaster Loan proceeds are not quite as restricted in terms of what they can be used for. So I want people to keep that in mind. Remember, sba.gov/coronavirus will take you to quite a bit of information as far as these funding programs. The final thing I wanted to mention, Kathy, was that for those folks that actually already have existing traditional SBA loans under what we would call the 7A program, so an SBA guaranteed loan, or maybe they've received funding under the 504 loan program. The CARES Act legislation allocated funds for SBA to make payments on those loans on their behalf for the next 6 months. So there's certainly an opportunity for some significant short-term cash flow relief in that regard for folks that have existing SBA loans.
Okay.
So I'll turn it back over to you at that point.
Thank you. Okay, Jaime, do you want to just kind of touch on what you're seeing in your client questions and any advice you might have for them?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me? I'm good, right? Okay, good. Okay, thanks. And hi, everybody. This is a really interesting time. I feel like I'm cheerleader, therapist, and advisor these days. I was taking a few notes as other people were talking to just try and either emphasize or add some more information in some of these places. One of the things I want to say too, I mean, I think, for the SBA, no one had experience in doing what they've been trying to do if they weren't working in the SBA in the 30s and rolling out the New Deal, which none of them were. This is all, pure craziness. And so we get there's going to be, it's not going to be smooth trying to do what they're doing, and as well as the banks trying to deal with the PPP loans. But what I would also say, and I want to acknowledge, is that our experience on that $10,000 up to $10,000 EIDL advanced loan, forgivable loan, was not exactly the same, because what the communication we got, I just want to acknowledge to everybody, was that it was going to be $10,000. And we understood now, we've been given information that as of Sunday, there was a conference call, and we didn't actually get the information until a day later. But I'll tell you, it was pretty crushing to have to go back after the SBDCs have been messaging this $10,000 to say, oops, nope, we have new messaging from the SBA that contradicts, what we've been telling you. That was a really exciting thing. And I get how it may not have penciled out when you get 2 million people, but I just want to acknowledge that that was a pretty a dark day, for a lot of people, including me. And I had a couple of people call me to keep me from jumping off a bridge and going, no, how am I going to tell people this? So that was tough. We get, everyone's just trying to do the best, but I understand that was a tough one for people to hear that. So we get that. And we're also trying to make sure, we're looking at all other ways, that we can help you. So another thing I want to talk about, I think Mark touched on it, but basically apply for both EIDL and PPP. The ways that they blend together and, an advance from EIDL, affects your PPP, that can all be figured out. The best thing to do is get in the queue. just get in the queue, and you'll be talking to real people, before you, sign any loan papers. So just get in the queue right now. The Washington.
Jamie?
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that they just can't be for the same purpose if you apply for both.
Exactly. And it might be, that if you have an idle, it can be rolled into more favorable PPP terms. I don't know, the technicalities of that, but don't worry, you aren't, your loan processor is going to help you, sort that out. So, so that's true. So even if you have something forgiven in idle, that will, impact what's forgiven in the PPP. But you don't have to worry about that right now. Best to get in the queue. Somebody said something I saw about nonprofits, and for the federal programs, nonprofits, basically any organization under 500 employees that's not illicit or illegal can apply for these things. It's only the state, as far as I remember, that it didn't include nonprofits. Is that right, Kathy?
My understanding is the federal does not include 501c6s.
C6s, okay. And that's like KEDA.
Like KEDA, like the chambers, any business association typically.
Right. Yeah, so any of you, and those people know they can't get it. So the rest of you, you're all good unless you're nearing that 500 employees. Another thing is I wanted to mention is also there's nobody here from Employment Security, but we were just on a webinar, SBDCs were on a webinar with them yesterday, and they are hoping by mid-April to have updated their systems to be able to allow for the self-employed business owners and contractors who aren't normally eligible for unemployment to be able to get unemployment, and that's through the CARES Act. It's just not ready to go, but it will be retroactive until when the act passed, which was March 27th. So I assume, because there's no waiting week in this process for right now, that means the first week of April will be the first week you're covered retroactively. Again, I don't have an exact date. They just said mid-April. So for some of you, Kathy, did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying that's what I've heard as well.
Yeah. So for some of you small business owners, gig owners, or gig workers, whatever, this might be, the best thing you've got going right now, for getting some relief for yourselves. The PPP, it's a big thing. We have a lot of people, trying to find access to a PPP loan processor. And I know, there are, wonderful banks like Kitsap Bank, for example. I know the intent, before this started was we would love to help everybody. And I know the reality is just that, there are just, the overload is crazy, and it's not realistic right now. And I also know there's other local banks who are working, to get it online through a streamlined process with the SBA to be able to process these loans, and they're just waiting right now. And I'd be glad to announce that as soon as I hear. What I've heard is there's a couple of banks, Washington Federal, and I don't know if they're Washington Federal and Savvy Bank, SAVI. I don't know much about it. I just heard through the grapevine that they were taking new customers. So again, Washington Federal and SAVI, Savvy Bank. I don't know anything more right now, but I just jotted them down when I heard that. So Washington Federal is also offering some nice little line of credit with no interest for 90 days. And so, if you're looking for support that your current bank can't give you, might be a good place for you to check out. The other thing, let's see, what else did I have here? Oh, and if another option, I don't know if some of the small business owners, I think Mark was talking about, the whole idea of these things is to, keep people attached to their company through the payroll protection plan, or whatever. But another option for business owners, if they haven't looked at it already, would be shared work, where, they're getting half unemployment and you're bringing them, back to work, half time. And that might be something, that just works out a little better, makes a little more sense. But again, look at those different ways that employees can be categorized that can make more sense for a business owner. And in the end, I would just say, for the Small Business Development Center, we're working as hard as we can. I'm so glad I'm joking, it wasn't me, but I dragged Kevin Holt back, who was the guy who launched the Kitsap SBDC. He's assisting right now. So we have we have 100% more people in your local SBDC, you know,
Awesome.
than we did a week ago, just to help us through, you know, all the need with our small businesses in Kitsap County. And one of the things is, you know, it'd be great if you were able to find sources to help you through filling out applications as best you can before you go to us, and that we can focus on helping businesses strategize on how to keep in business, you know, and beyond. Again, just trying to maximize our resources. You know, there's a lot of help, you know, if you go look for it. We're happy to send help. We can respond quickly to emails just to direct you to the right source. But if you're setting up a meeting, it'd be, you know, that it's great if we're talking to businesses. We're helping make sure they're in business after this is all over, and what, you know, helping them to make some decisions, I would say.
Super. Okay, so let's get into the questions. With the idle changes, there's confidence that there's not going to be enough money for everyone, and it's looking kind of like a race for the funds. So does anyone anticipate, I have heard rumors that there will be another package. So what do we know about getting some, you know, being left out or upping the budget?
Kathy?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So if with respect to the, excuse me, Paycheck Protection Program, so that was funded out of the CARES Act with $349 billion. And what we heard this morning is that to date, and this is really the program only opened up on Friday, to date, there have been $115 billion committed.
Okay.
So we're about a third of the way through that funding allotment. In terms of what's out there, I'm not a political, so I'm just stating some things that are on the news. But there is a serious discussion underway regarding an additional $250 billion in funding for that program. What I would kind of suggest to people is you know, the money's probably not going to be gone tomorrow or this week, but clearly as lenders get more proficient in making these loans, that's going to put more demand on that allotment. And so if a business owner thinks that they are going to be a good candidate for the program, that they should be doing that due diligence right now. They should be making that connection with their existing lender. They should be going through the application process and getting in their queue, or they should be going out and maybe trying to locate that one-off lending arrangement if they don't have a bank or a credit union that's participating in the program.
Okay, thank you. So as a sole proprietor, can I apply for unemployment and one of the loans? Jamie's nodding yes.
Yeah,
Jamie,
I don't know anything that's, you know, that would prohibit that at all. I mean, I suppose you have to report. Let's see, if you did, let me just think about this. If you did payroll protection, oh, well, if you do payroll protection.
Yeah, you can't double dip.
Yeah,
right, I think that's what it would come down to. You know, as a technical matter, I don't know on something like the shared work how that would play into the ability for somebody to get compensation via the Paycheck Protection Program and unemployment. It's possible, but there can't be two sources of federally related funds for the same purpose.
Right.
Yeah, so sorry for that correction. Yes, on the payroll part, no, you can't. And then the other thing is there's businesses that are really trying to strategize how to best use the PPP, because there are some businesses where they're thinking, well, wouldn't it be best if my employees were on unemployment until I got to the point where I knew my business was going to open up, and then use the PPP, to support my reopening of the business? But again, how big is that pot? And when you're ready to do that, it's only available until June 30th anyway. But how do you time that, and that's the complicating factor.
Yeah, and related to that kind of is the question I've heard from more than one person that's talked to me, I'm sure Jaime, you've heard it a lot, is that some of the banks are saying, if you're not one of our clients now, we will not entertain doing a PPP loan for you. So that news about Washington Federal was good. Mark, is SBA doing anything to address that, or they just have to keep searching?
Yeah, as of now, what we're hoping, Kathy, is that we're going to start to maybe, as banks get their arms a little bit more around what's happening and what they want to do with it, that we would be able to at least informally compile some information about other lender options. You mentioned, Washington Federal. I think we had heard the same thing. I actually heard that, you guys can weigh in on this, Cabbage was working as perhaps a facilitator for some other banks. And so again, this is really just about a mechanism to push money out. And I think that if that is the case, there's nothing wrong with a business owner going out to somebody like that or another fintech lender if they are engaging with other lenders to help them go through this process, and they're willing to take other obviously different kinds of customers. It would be worth at least doing the due diligence, kind of the research to find out if that looked legitimate. And my sense is it probably would be. Again, that they're probably leveraging some of their back office capacity to help facilitate these loans for traditional banks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question actually about that for Mark, because I know at least two of our local banks that are trying as hard as they can to get approved. And then we're also heard from one of your colleagues that there's other, more non-traditional lenders, like you mentioned, but there used to be this lender match tool, which seemed like it would be really useful right now, except that it's been redirected to the PPP information page.
Right.
And so might that be an opportunity for the SBA to help share that information as they become aware of opportunities to connect?
It very well might be. However, that probably would result in whoever those lenders are just getting completely overwhelmed. I just think that the numbers of businesses and the numbers that we're talking about, it's sort of an unprecedented situation to try to see what that is going to look like at the local level even is quite overwhelming.
Yeah, we're still going to be trying until we don't hear people asking for the support anymore to help them find banks, though. So as much help as we can get, and maybe it's information that's distributed to SBDCs, so we can help disseminate information without having it be publicly available. I don't know. Yes,
absolutely, absolutely. And Jaime, I know our office is working pretty closely communication-wise with SBDC leadership.
Right.
Very consistently, and we really appreciate what you guys are doing. Not only communicating some of this basic information about these programs, but as you kind of suggested, maybe helping businesses think about planning and strategy and sort of the things that have to do with running the business and getting themselves in a mindset that they're going to be ready to sort of re-engage. I think that's a really important message that it's good that we're maybe going to have a way to push some money out to lenders, but for things to really go the way that optimally, the businesses need to be able to restart, effectively. And so the work of the SBDC network is terrific in that regard, you guys. So don't overlook this resource. They're available to you guys at no cost. And while Jaime might be overwhelmed, there may be some of her colleagues in the network that can assist as well.
Well, we actually have, and thanks, thanks for those words, Mark. And we actually have a triage system going on right now. So for the Kitsap SBDC is kind of like the outpost for the Western Washington University SBDC in Bellingham. And they have graduate interns and admin, as well as a handful of SBDC advisors. And so we've all been working together, and then with Kevin's assistance, temporarily for me now. So we are bigger than it looks like when you see just my name on Kitsap SBDC. And we also, again, we're part of a state network. So anything you come to us with, if it's something that I can't answer, I go to my whole network, and people are weighing in from across Washington State. They're all MBAs and specialists and have a lot of experience. So we're here to help.
Perfect.
Okay, so maybe this is for Steve and Mark, because I've heard this question a lot too. The PPP is supposed to be able to assist self-employed sole props, but there's no place on the application to address that, and so they are being denied in their application. So is there going to be a change in the application? Is there a recommendation for them on follow through? How is that being addressed?
Mark, I'll jump in, and then you can maybe pick up and fill in some blanks. I mean, the application itself is the only number that's related to payroll that's input on the application is average monthly payroll costs. Within the program, there's a definition of what payroll costs means. And specific to sole proprietors, to independent contractors, it would be wages, commission income, net earnings from self-employment, or similar compensation. So similar compensation is a broad term, not defined further as far as I know, but within the definition of payroll costs, there is a specificity in regard to sole props, independent contractors, to the extent I just outlined.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Steve. Thanks for having that available. I know that this program and the guidelines that have come out are intended to try to encompass a variety of different business structures and arrangements, to include absolutely a sole contributor, sole proprietorship, contractor type businesses, even I believe some of the gig type economy workers, that there's a way to wedge that information into the what's going to be a typical application that a lender is going to put out there that would reflect what SBA's application requirements are. So I really think that there's a way to do it. Ultimately, I don't know what you think, Steve. If somebody's trying to do this on an online basis, they run into some kind of a hurdle in that, something like that, would it make sense to try to put something in to get the thing to be accepted, in hopes of being able to then have a further conversation with somebody about the specifics?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for the way Kitsap Bank approaches it, but I think most banks are trying to do this through a electronic portal, accept the applications, because that's necessary to be efficient with a big number. But our process is that as part of your preparation of your application, we've created a worksheet, and many banks have created a worksheet for you to go through. And that worksheet's not complicated, but it guides you through the requirements of the program and the definition of payroll costs, and helps you work into a number that you ultimately will put into the actual application. And as you go through that worksheet, it'll guide you through how to handle different types of businesses, different types of payroll costs. including sole prop, independent contractor. So to the extent you're starting the application process, your bank should have resources. Many of them post them on their websites of these calculators, or that would be part of the initial step where they would send you that calculator after your inquiry. That's our approach.
That's a great approach.
Inquire on our website, and then upon your inquiry, we will send you a documentation package, an application package that includes an overview of the program, a worksheet to calculate your average monthly costs, the application itself, as well as some information around BSA and know your client type obligations that we have.
That's great. And you guys have done all of that in just a matter of days, which is just remarkable.
Okay, so I'm circling back up by trying to catch, things that are kind of in a theme. Lots of questions about the idle, rumors that the computers crashed and they lost a lot of applications, that they've not heard back, and they're concerned that they don't know that they're in the queue. How do they know that they're in the queue?
Right. So my understanding, Kathy, and I appreciate all those questions, that whole process has been a very challenging one. If an applicant went through the revised application process, which is the one that included the quick cash advance, the up to $10,000 cash advance, they should have received an application number. Something should have come out in the form of an email. If they have that, I believe, based on what I know, their position in the process is good. The challenge, I think, is with some of the applications that were submitted prior to that revision, the one that included the up to $10,000 grant, or whatever you want to call it. Those folks may not have maintained their status. I know SBA went out to everybody to the extent that they could and asked them to refile, if you will, in order to put in for the cash advance. But I think that was also a way to get people to apply under the revised system, so that there was some integrity to what they had done, and it was going to be retained. I'm hopeful that if that was done, and people received an application number, that they're in good stead with regard to the entire process. So
if they do not have an application number, and they should probably check spam as well, then they need to reapply. It sounds like.
And I think if there's any good news at all, the application process is really quite abbreviated. It probably takes less than 10 minutes.
Okay, so if you do not find anything from the SBA in your inbox with a number, then likely they need to reapply.
Kathy?
Yes.
So we were told, that if you had applied before March 30th, that was the new version. It went live probably sometime on the 29th, which was a Sunday. But if you applied before that Monday the 30th, you should reapply. And it wasn't clear at the time to us that it was because of the cash advance, the forgivable loan / grant. But so what's happened is, just to sort of what's actually happening, I had a client, he contacted me, said, I'm so confused. I applied before March 30th and I got an email telling me I had to reapply. And I also got a phone call from a loan processor. So what am I supposed to do? And I said, well, talk to the loan processor and reapply. So it's really confusing, because the reapplication, apparently his loan you know, it's going through the process for the actual loan. He's looking at $170,000 loan, but then, and he also had to reapply, you know, from the start for the cash advance. So, Mark, does that go against anything that you're thinking should have happened?
Probably. It has been very confusing. I don't think there's any problem with the idea of reapplying if there's any uncertainty at all.
Well, it was for the cash advance. And actually, when we were told, you know, by someone else from the SBA that make sure everybody reapplies, I didn't hear any distinction at that point that it was just to make sure you get the cash advance. But again, regardless, if it's just for the cash advance, which is a forgivable loan / grant, you know, hey, that's worth it if it's $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. Right. You know, if you're not also applying for the PPP, then, you know, that's worth it. Also, just kind of the peace of mind. But if people reapply, you know, if they applied before March 30th, and they should just reapply, because it's not going to hurt.
And if you have a chance to talk to somebody, that's a step forward, because unfortunately that's been a real challenge as well. Again, just because of the volume, it's proving to be just a very difficult situation. Hey, Kathy.
Yes.
Hey, I need to jump off. I gotta do another.
Okay. If we have some other questions, I will just send them to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
And I might be able to answer some of them.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. Hey, I really appreciate the opportunity. It's nice to be on the panel with you.
Right. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions for you.
And I wish everybody in the audience good luck and success. And thanks again for the chance to be here.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Kathy, I have an 11 o'clock as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you. Well, we'll just soldier on for a few minutes here and see what we can answer. And again, we can follow up with the speakers that have to leave and get their answers. Steve, you might know this answer. For those with existing SBA loans under 7A, do they have to contact their lender? Oh, he left. Jamie, do you know this answer? The 7A lending, the 6 months of relief, is that automatic, or do they have to follow up with SBA or their lender?
You know, that is a good question. So I'm going to have to, I'll look into that and get back to you, and you can send out that information, because I'm not sure. I've heard people, you know, who are trying to contact the SBA to find out, and I didn't hear that they had success. So I was kind of waiting on that. But I'll look into that.
Okay. What employee retention tax credits? How current are you on those for the PPP loans? They're saying that it doesn't combine, so that's a question I will ask Mark.
What was the question, Kathy? I didn't.
The employee retention tax credit.
Yeah, I don't know.
I will follow up on that one. How do I know if I applied under the old versus the revised for idle? If you did it before March 30th, right?
Yes.
Also,
I don't think because there was 3 versions. So in the most recent one, there was a checkbox at the very end for and I'm not sure that this didn't get changed along the way, because I heard that people that applied the first week, it said specifically $10,000, and now apparently it says up to $10,000. But that was a checkbox at the very end, and as far as I know, that was only on the most recent version, because for a short time they had 2 different things you could apply for. You could apply for the EIDL or the EIDL advance. It was 2 different things, and then this all went away with the new version. So you applied for both in one fell swoop, as long as you check the box at the end of the EIDL loan application.
Oh, thank you, Monica. Monica checked in and said, if you do the PPP, an employer is not able to take the payroll tax credits that are under the CARES Act. and it does not affect the sick leave under the federal paid sick leave or expanded FMLA. Yes, Monica Blackwood,
Yes.
West Sound Workforce is our go-to for anything workforce development, unemployment related, and we're happy to connect folks with her. You can just email info@kitsapeda.org if you have questions that you think.
Monica's online there.
Yeah, she is.
I mean, as a panelist.
Yeah. Now, some people are saying they got a confirmation number at the end of their application. So we need to check with SBA to see if maybe that's what they're doing now instead of mailing the number.
Oh yeah, no, they get a confirmation at the end.
Yeah, so some things to follow up. And yes, this is like super confusing, frustrating, challenging. I guess we'll all build more character as we go through this.
You know, and I would have to say too, you know, I hope that from this, we build more business resiliency, and that I think it's a good time for, you know, a lot of small businesses to be able to reflect and see what they could do, you know, on the other side of this whole crisis to be a stronger business. And that's where, you know, I'd love to sit down and talk to you. I think we'll be doing a lot of training with, you know, how to leverage your financial statements to make strategic decisions. And there's a lot of, you know, we got to look at the positive in this.
Okay, Monica,
Yes,
are you there?
I am.
Okay, so people still are getting confused about the whole, you know, unemployment, the PPP application. So like somebody says, how does that loan work when some employees are still able to work and some are not? Do you have any insight on that?
So going back to the original question, under the CARES Act, there is the PPP loan, and there's also an aspect that employers could access, which is for tax credits. But you can't do both of them. You have to choose one or the other, whether you're going to do the tax credits or the PPP aspect of it. Now, when I said the paid sick leave or the expanded FMLA, that's in relation to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And if employees go out on the 80 hours of sick leave, paid sick leave, or if they are subject to the expanded FMLA aspect, where both of those things are paid by the employer then goes and does a tax credit on their payroll taxes in order to get that money back back to the employer, so reimbursed to the employer. So there's two separate things, but under the CARES Act, either you do the PPP or you do the tax credit, the employee tax credit. So I hope that maybe clears up the little bit of confusion.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the questions, any sense on when the cash advances? We have not heard of anybody who's received one yet.
Nope. And I keep asking people to let me know if they hear anything, especially when it was $10,000 versus the up to $10,000. I'm guessing the up to is retroactive to anyone, and that's probably why nobody got it right away, because they figured out pretty quickly the numbers weren't going to pencil out and get something to everybody if they gave 10,000 to everybody. So that's why I think there was a delay on anybody getting anything. My theory.
Yeah. Oh, there's a question about EIDL versus the PPP. So EIDL is directly online through the SBA portal. The other one is handled through SBA's lender partners. So that one is a loan you go to the bank for. And as Jamie or I hear of more lenders that will take new clients, we'll certainly get the word out on that. Is there anything else? Are you guys looking to see if I've missed anything?
No, I'm leaving it all up to
What is the criteria from the up to clauses? Income from last year?
number of employees.
Yeah, it's based, like if you have 10 employees, then you could potentially get up to 10,000.
You know,
Right.
I think that was I mean, that's our assumption. I don't know if I've seen that in writing, but we were told it was based on number of employees. And I guess, I don't know if we might have, you know, sort of interpreted that that meant $1,000 per employee. I don't know that I've actually seen that in writing, but.
Okay. And then I'm sensing a lot of frustration from self-employed contract workers, gig workers. So I will follow up with Steve from Kitsap Bank on what kind of approach they maybe need to take. One gentleman says he's talked to 2 banks, and when he said he's self-employed, they just kind of stopped the conversation.
Well, and one of the things was, and this was kind of informal too, I think, well, actually, no, it wasn't informal, but they, it wasn't until I think tomorrow that anybody said they would take PPP applications from self-employed gig workers, you know, whatever. But now I think what's happened is they've become so overwhelmed. I don't know that tomorrow means anything to anyone anymore. However, you know, for between the PPP for covering yourself, you know, on payroll, and then again, as you know, it was pointed out, you can't double dip. There's the PPP, and there's going to be, you know, unemployment available to you coming, you know, in mid-April when the system gets updated at the state.
Yeah, yeah. I heard yesterday on one that if you are double dipping, the federal government considers that fraud. So that's not a good thing.
Yeah, so just be clear that there's funds like EIDL and stuff that have nothing to do with payroll. It's just payroll and unemployment can't coexist.
Correct. Let's see. I think I have covered the gist.
Kathy, can I jump in?
Yes.
One more thing
Yes.
about all of that. On a session I was on yesterday, there were some representatives from Key Bank on there as well, and they had talked about starting to accept new business accounts so that they could access, so that the new businesses could access the PPP. So Key Bank might also be another avenue for people to try. The people that we're talking about are in Pierce County, so I don't know if it depends on which branch necessarily, but that's another. And they have been an approved SBA lender for a long time, so they're already in the system.
Okay. And I know the chambers are really wanting to know what they can do to help their businesses. So I would say maybe KEDA and SBDC and the chamber set up a time to meet separately just to kind of brainstorm.
I'll join.
Yeah, I already put you on that list, so it's all good. I don't want to keep people here longer than we need to because we're all busy trying to navigate new waters. So, and if I missed your question, please just email KEDA and I can make sure that we follow up. Just to remind you that we do have a dedicated web page, COVID-19, on our website. It's updated daily, as is our blog. And if you're not on our newsletter, I encourage you to do that, as we keep adding things there daily. Sometimes it's often posted on social media. And this recording will be online on our website later. So we just encourage you to come each week. And next week, we will be working on public health and what we can do as a community for that. And thank you for joining us, and be well.